G'day there, Cygnets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
All right, welcome back to a bevy of bloods. I'm Chris, and with Noddy away, you are stuck with me as host. The good news, though, is that we've got a very special guest with us, one of the bevy, Jules. Jules, nice to have you back.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be back. Would prefer it to be on the back of a win, but looking forward to it nonetheless.
That's right. We got to do what we got to do here. But look, in this episode, number 36, we're going to be reviewing the Swannies round 7 game. So, as Noddy says, fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Swans. So, yesterday, on a Sunday twilight game, our Sydney Swans lost to the Brisbane Lions by 24 points with a final score of 13-11-89 to Brisbane's 17-11-113. So, first impressions. Jules, what did you think of that?
Well, it's always tough to lose on your home deck. And look, kudos to Brisbane. It was a complete team performance, and they are really showing the rest of the competition that they're the number one threat to Melbourne going back to back. They had an even spread of 10 goal kickers. Very hard to compete with that. A couple of things from our side. Our structure certainly lost its way as we crumbled under Brisbane's pressure, particularly in our defensive half. And losing a game when Buddy kicked 6, wow, that's only ever happened once before. So, yeah, it's disappointing, but we move forward.
Yeah, look, that's right, isn't it? It's one of those. Buddy came out of the blocks just screaming, and we just really couldn't do it. I agree with all the points there. I think their pressure was really high. Fagan in the press conference afterwards was really, really wrapped at the way that his team played. I think that's about as good as their team's going to fire off. I think everything was working for him. And of course, Neil, that you'll talk about in a second, was going absolutely bananas. So, hey, that's what we're saying here. It's that we're in contention, but it looks like we were beaten by a much better team yesterday. So in terms of key takeaways and stats, what do you have on your side?
Well, look, it's probably nothing new, but Lachie Neale is an absolute beast. Yeah. He finished with 37 disposals, and unbelievably, 26 of them were contested. So in a real pressure game, I mean, that's just unbelievable numbers. 11 clearances, 9 tackles, and 10 score involvements, plus a goal of his own. So he had an absolute ripper of a game. Yeah. In terms of our team, the back six just had a really tough day out. To me, it looked like they lacked a bit of cohesion and communication. It didn't help that our defensive leader, Dane Rampey, had an absolute shocker of a game by his very lofty standards. And we really need for him to be up and about if we're going to compete. Things aren't going well when you have Isaac Heaney being forced to go back as a spare man in defence. So I think that kind of says it all, I think.
That's a pretty good summary right there, I think, yeah. Look, I would probably take away the dual rucks that we had to work with, right? So it was Laddams versus Oscar McInerney and Darcy Fort. And it was tough. He had a tough game. I think he was beaten pretty soundly in the first half of the game, where he's battling pretty hard against two very, very, very capable ruckmen. You just couldn't really get it done. So in the first quarter, I got a couple numbers here. In the first quarter, he had 20 ruck contests, only won the 2, whereas Oscar McInerney and Fort won 17 of them. So just got soundly beaten in that first quarter. Second one, a little bit better, where he's kind of dragged it up to 30%. So that's 7 wins out of 23 ruck contests. And then towards the end there, that was kind of what his standing was. And he was a bit better in that fourth quarter, winning over 40% of his ruck contests. So first quarter, 10%. The next second and third quarters, he had 30% wins, and then the last one over 40%. So it seemed like he dragged it back. But it's just kind of asked the question, and a question of yourself straight off the bat here would be, when Hickey's in, what do we do? What do you think?
Look, it's not a bad problem to have, because last year when Hickey went down, we were really looking around for some options. So, look, you have to bring Hickey back in, and it would be interesting to see really how flexible Laddams can be around the rest of the ground in terms of a marking option. But look, for me, Hickey has well and truly earned his spot, and he comes straight back in.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those ones where, do we send one of them up forward? I mean, we know Hickey's a good kick at goal. We've seen him being pretty consistent every time he gets an option up there. Do we have a younger Laddams to run up there forward? And I think he was learning a bit of that forward craft over at Port from memory.
Yeah, unfortunately, he hasn't kicked a goal yet, has he? He had a couple of cracks at it.
He's got one.
He's got one.
He's
okay.
got one, yeah.
Okay. I think he might have missed one on the weekend, which I thought was a bit disappointing, because I think it was sort of right in front. But look, he's certainly a great contested mark, which is what you want out of a tall guy. So if they can both be flexible enough to play in different positions, then I can't see a reason why we wouldn't have both in the side.
Yeah, that's right. And it's kind of, we'll maybe talk about it a bit later, but it also then asks the question, Amadi, how does he get himself into the side? Do we ever see Sinclair again if these two fellas are healthy? So Laddams just doing the number, I think, is keeping his spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. Look, it's a bit harder during a loss, as Noddy's mentioned in the past and as Steve-O has mentioned. But what were your favourite moments of the game or missed chances?
Yeah, it is always hard after a loss, but look, we're glass half full fans. So, look, I think that Lance Franklin in that third quarter was the best that we've seen from him in quite a long time. To be honest with you, in that third term, he kicked 4 goals in 11 minutes, and he helped out for a 5th to bring us within 3 points. So he nearly won the game off his own boot. So, yeah, can't go past the individual effort of Lance Franklin. Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. He's not getting older. It doesn't feel like he seems to be sticking.
He wound the clock back, that's for sure. Yeah.
And then do we just say at this point, sign him up for next year? Like, at what point do we start having that conversation? Where is it by the buy? Do we know whether he's going to sign on for another year? Is that when we make the decision?
Yeah, I think the ball's in his court. If he backs himself, and he knows his body better than anybody, and I think the coaches take actually a lot of advice, from Lance himself in regards to how he's going. So he's not missed many this year. Obviously, the broken finger, but that was not really to do with an older body. So look, at this point in time, if Lance is ready to sign, then absolutely you sign him on for another one.
Look, he's coming equal 7th in the race. No, equal 4th in the race in the Coleman. So Tom Hawkins up there with 22 goals. Lance Franklin right down there at 18. It's only 4 off the mark. And as you said, he had a week off with the finger. To make it particularly special as well, you've got Isaac Heaney with 18 as well. So we've got these. Isaac Heaney is a halftime forward. He's up there with the Coleman. So you just wonder whether, I don't know, does he spend more time up there to kind of give Franklin another man as another target? But
well, exactly. I mean, look, having someone like Lance in the side allows Heaney to kick those goals, right? Because it's he can sort of run riot when Lance is picking up at least 2 defenders, which seems to be the way of it. So, look, absolutely, we would be crazy to not keep Lance in as long as he's willing. And it with now Papley back in the side. We really need those extra avenues to goal. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll talk about Papley in a little bit. I think we've got a little bit to talk about over that side. But one thing I do want to say about the Buddy moment, when he was, I think it was his 3rd goal, he was lining up for that snap kick in the pocket, and in the camera footage had in the background a picture of a fellow that was just staring at Buddy with what could only be described as love of lifetime.
Get in line.
Just, yeah. And I think it was Sportsbet or something had a good little meme. It said like, find somebody who looks at you the way that this guy looks at Buddy Franklin. And I'm like, I think that's 30,000 people at the ground most times. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He certainly gets the fans through the turnstiles. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, hey, I think we spoke about it last year as well, on his way up to the 1,000, whether he was worth the money. And at the time, we both agreed, yeah. I kind of feel this is just extra icing on the cake to be as competitive as it is in his last year of his contract.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, the way that he moves, you cannot believe he's 35. And do you know what shocked me actually about Lance on the weekend was his overhead marking, which he's not normally known for. But geez, he took some absolute beauties on the weekend. So
yeah,
a few more strings to his bow. Look out.
Maybe they replaced his finger with some kind of bionic magnet.
Possibly. Sticky fingers.
Sticky fingers. He's got the money for it. Maybe he's got bionic man. You never know. We'll rebuild him better. Anyway. Look, let's move down a little bit further. Now, the Bevies BNF. So this is the ABOB medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. The Bevies' best bloods this week in 3, 2, 1 point order were Mills, Parker, and then Buddy. Jules, do you want to take it away with Mills?
Yeah, look, the great players stand up when the rest of the team is flat. And Callum Mills, with 30 disposals and 1 goal, he absolutely played his guts out like he has done week in, week out. So, yeah, well done, Millsy. Luke Parker, like Mills, battled all evening. He finished with 33 disposals, 21 of them contested, 8 clearances and 6 score involvements. So, again, he can very much hold his head up high. And then, of course, the big man, Buddy, single-handedly dragging us back into it, cutting a big halftime deficit to just 3 points.
Yep,
simply sensational. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And with Mills, he did 7 tackles as well. I think team high. Maybe second in the team, with Warner getting 8. So pretty tidy effort by Mills in defense as well. He did go over to Neil to try to stem some of that effect that he was having around the contest. It seemed in watching the game again, he had a bit of an impact, but I think by that point the game was kind of getting away from us, and we need to be more offensive rather than defensive at that point. So watching the game, Neil had Mills initially go over to him, row bottom for a little while there, and also Warner. But one thing I did notice is that Warner's attention span on his man is not quite there.
He needs lacks a little bit of maturity, I think. He wants to be where the ball is.
Yeah, absolutely. He was looking for an offensive out rather than being a defensive man, which is just something it's a two-way game. It's something you got to learn in time. So we're not going to smash him. It's just the way it is at the beginning. Just a good opportunity for him to learn tagging what is the game's best mid at the time. So it is what it is. And Parker, the other stat for Parker with getting 2 points in the ABOB is the 5 inside 50s. So definitely up and around it, trying to wheel the game forward. Look, it was a tough one for me. I really felt that Parker might have got 3 points here, but Mills definitely deserved it, and Parker was a very close second. And so he's been doing this consistent football his entire life, and we're used to it. And when he's not there to do it, I don't know what's going to happen with my life. I really don't know.
Yeah, he's certainly the heartbeat of our side, that's for sure. Thank goodness he signed on for a little while longer.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. And Buddy, of course, hey, in addition to the 6-0, 15 disposals on top, it really got up and around. I think one thing we did mention at the beginning before we started recording was I don't necessarily think this was his best game of the season, although the stats look incredible. He had a big flush at the beginning of that third, but then I want to be quiet. Was that him, or was that just us not being able to get some clean ball out his way? Look,
we were just thumping it in long, weren't we? In the beginning, it was awful. The lack of structure and the lack of thought that was going in. I guess it, kudos again to Brisbane for their pressure, because they just made us feel like we had no time. So look, the delivery into Franklin wasn't that great, but he did look slow. The first couple of quarters, but geez, that third term, absolute purple patch. And you're right. I think, look, it was a standout, but maybe if he kind of kept that momentum going, we were a big chance. Unfortunately, in that fourth term, they managed to. I think they changed opponents on him, didn't they? They flipped the switch. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a couple there, and he kind of had a bit of success with both of them. But for the most part, they ended up shutting him down.
Yeah,
well
it was well coached. Goes without saying. So well done, Fakes.
Yeah,
that seemed to shut him down, and really sort of that momentum then was lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's it. Look, in terms of the way that the votes went around the league, Mills didn't factor into the coaches' vote. It went 10-0, as you'd imagine. Then 7 to Buddy, 7 to Zorko, who had a cracking game. We can talk about it in a moment. 2 to Parker, 2 to Max Day, 1 to McCluggage, great name, and 1 to Harris Andrews. And the AFL deemed it to be for the Swans in order of top to bottom: Franklin, Mills, Parker, Warner, and Laddams. So knowing a bit of that, any honourable mentions for this weekend, do you think?
Yeah, look, we mentioned him just before. he's certainly not a tagger, Chad Warner. Look, he's one of the youngsters who can certainly hold his head high. I think you mentioned it, a team high of most tackles. And 7 inside 50s. The number one thing that impresses me about Chad is he is so quick. Honestly, when he gets that ball, he just backs himself, and he really did actually stand up when our backs were to the wall, and he really just went after his game plan and managed to keep the confidence high. So big tick for the young fella.
Yeah, his first 3 or 4 steps are lightning quick. He's kind of got that. Maybe not as quick, but that explosiveness of a Dangerfield kind of feel about it, where he grabs the ball between his hands, gets 3 or 4 steps in front, and then it's just hard to wheel that back. He's a bloody exciting person. And look, I think we've mentioned him, if not in the top 3, definitely in the honourable mentions for every single game this year. That's incredible for a third-year player.
Yeah, he's our most improved by quite a margin, I would think, so far this year.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Look, I've got an honourable mention. We mentioned him earlier in the stats there, Laddams. I think I'm really happy with the way Laddams is playing. I think this week was a real test. I think it was the first game he was playing against Goldie in North Melbourne Kangaroos. They're not much of a team, but I think we both, and I threw you under the bus with what you said, that he was too busy trialing all the pubs around Surrey Hills rather than being at the track at the time. And the only reason I said it, the only reason I threw you under the bus, because I genuinely kind of believed it as well. I felt that he was a bit underdone in the fitness side, but he has really done the number. He's playing the whole games through, with the exception of, I think, one game where he had a quarter off. But he's doing the game. And although Reid did give him a hand at some points, let's have a quick look at the stats for ruck contests. You had Reid in there for 24 of them throughout the whole game, and you've got Laddams in there for 87. So Laddams definitely taking the brunt of that effort.
Yeah, I take it all back. Laddams. I think, look, maybe he needed that, that first game to just get into it a bit. And he certainly seems to have bought into our game plan and seems to understand, really what his role is and how he can, assist the mid. So, he has been very, very impressive. And the good thing is that, I think there's a lot of improvement still in him to go. So, yeah, it could be a very good pickup.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was devastated by losing Alialia, and he's gone on to have a great career over there at Port Adelaide, although they're struggling at the moment, but it's not his fault. He's doing his job. All Australian last year. Brilliant. So, but to pick up Laddams, look, at this rate, I think we're winning that trade so far. So I'm very, very, very happy. The other honourable mention on my side would be Heaney, just doing sneaky things. Heaney had, in quotes, another quiet night with just the 3 goals. So,
you're going well when they're saying that about you.
Yeah, when you're like, I didn't really factor into the game. No, He did pretty strongly, and he just didn't quite have that impact. He didn't get his hands on the ball as much. He wasn't playing out of the middle. I don't know whether that's just because we had Logan out this week, and we had Papley playing more in the middle. but yeah, something that interested me.
Yeah, possibly just being on the back foot, as I mentioned. I think they even sent him back a few times. So I think he was sent wherever he was told to go, which unfortunately for us, it doesn't necessarily mean good things if he's not up forward kicking goals and moving the ball forward.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think we're in we're just happy to have him on the ground. Just stay healthy, Heaney. I think you're going to be wrapping up All Australian pretty well, I think, at some point. Look, we've got a couple probably hot topics to talk through. Firstly, we'll just touch on how do we pull up after the match, and any MRO. There was one moment with a Hayward bump where I'm trying to remember, was it Rayner?
Daniel Rich.
Yeah,
that was an interesting one. Look, a little bit biased, I suppose, but look, for mine, Hayward was forced into that action. He was actually pushed into the player by another Lions player, and appeared to actually brace with his shoulder rather than elect to bump. And the good thing is that Daniel Rich jumped back up, no harm done, straight back up. Which is obviously a really good sign, and we know the MRO really do look at at whether or not anybody's hurt. So I think for mine, he's okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I haven't seen anything describing otherwise. I think the MRO, especially these days, is particularly touchy. So it's a favorite topic in the Twitter world, where people just start calling out absolutely everything, just hoping that nothing gets called, because it's been incredibly inconsistent with the bumping this year. Starting with Blakey getting hit by Tim English in our game against the Bulldogs, and then you had who's the big man from St Kilda? I've just had a blank. Well, he gets done for a week for what seemed to be a similar bump. And Mitch Robinson had to sit out 1 or 2 for his hit as well. But I think that one kind of came with a bit of a concussion test. So that's why that one sat out.
Yeah, it's a big difference, isn't it? If a player fails to get up immediately, they certainly seem to pay a bit more attention to it.
Yeah, and I guess while we're at it, let's maybe have a quick chat. Have you been paying attention to the way the MRO's kind of been structured or going this year, or?
Well, look, there hasn't seemed to have been anything major so far this year. I know we talked a lot about it last year. I think it still seems to be pretty inconsistent, as you just mentioned. I mean, look, we don't actually know what's going to end up happening, to Will Hayward. I think this will tell us a lot, really about how they're going, because I think in this instance, I don't know what else Will could have done. He really had to, defend himself a little bit as well. So, look, it'll be interesting to see how the MRO see it. But I know last year there was, I certainly had a few issues with it, but it's obviously seems to, when it comes to our players, we pay a little bit more attention to it.
Yeah, that's it. I think the only other one that's kind of come up, I think that was last week, where Buddy ran into an umpire, but it seemed like that umpire ran into him rather than the other way around. And I know Mills has been done for accidentally tripping an umpire as well, I think round one. So there's at least, look, from the pub test, from the pub eye test, the MRO is not really past it. It's been pretty inconsistent for the last few years and doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot better.
No, an interesting stat that I heard the other day is that, we're always going on about the umpires. The Sydney Swans received the least amount of free kicks, but they're also the side that's the least reported, which is really interesting. Considering how many free kicks we give away, there's not a lot to them a lot of the time by the sounds of it. So,
yeah, I think maybe ever since Barry Hoare has left the team, it's been a different number.
That's it.
There was a couple of moments. I don't know if any Swans fans remember some of those moments, but
Brent Staker, anyone?
I was at that game. That was just intense. That was pretty full on.
Yeah.
Look, the other thing that kind of came up out of the match was that Cunningham left in the fourth quarter for what seemed to be the groin. Bell came in. and it seemed like Charlie Cameron gave himself a little bit of extra room to get around. So I haven't heard anything about the Cunningham groin. Have you at all, Jules?
No, it's down as a test from what I could see. So
Right.
it looks like he should be okay.
Oh, good. Okay. Look, yeah, and on that point, there are some very angry Swans fans out there with Cunningham about every time we lose, they're right on his back. But I would generally say that I thought he played a pretty decent game by keeping, Cameron down pretty well. I don't think Cameron got a single touch in that first quarter. I'm just going to do some stats investigation as we're talking.
Yeah. It's easy to pick on the defenders when you lose. And I know I did it at the beginning. I don't. Cunningham was far from our worst. I'm going to be honest with you. I love him to pieces, but Dane Rampey was bloody awful. The amount of times that he punched it out when he could have marked it, and just the communication with all of them was just, could use some improvement.
Yeah, look, I've been calling it out for since the beginning of the season too. I just felt that our backline is just not gelling as smoothly as it has other times. And I don't know whether that's because maybe someone like a Rampy's lost half a step, or whether, some new faces in there are just trying to work out how it comes together. But a couple of weeks there where we had a really good run, where you had like some of the mids like Parker and Mills kind of falling back. You had some of the wingers being the more traditional centermen, which is like coming up the center. And we had a good structure moving, but the Lions' pressure is just too damn good.
It was outstanding. I mean, we couldn't get it out, just about. It was just they absolutely suffocated us. And look, in some instances, there's not a lot you can do about that. When you've got, I mean, let's face it, they're an unbelievable side, and they were on big time, and we weren't. But certainly seemed to lack a little bit of leadership back there. So I'm sure there'll be some discussions about that during the week.
Do you have any ideas of, is it a structural thing? Is it just a player-on-player thing? Do you have any opinion of it?
Look, to me, it just seemed like there was a lack of communication. They didn't seem to know what the other players were doing. Again, as I mentioned, there seemed to just be some poor decision-making, a lot of punching out when there were easy marks, which to me, it just sort of speaks of sort of lack of cohesion and awareness and, overall team support, because it's really hard to just blame your back six. Defense is happening all over the ground, and let's be honest, even in our forward 50, we were not tackling or chasing like Brisbane were. I think there was just a lack of intent all over.
Look, I'd agree with you. I'd go so far as to say I think one-on-one, our players in the back six there are still insanely good. So, but it is, to me, a little bit of cohesion, a little bit of a structure, just not knowing what the out is. But I would still put Rampy next to any forward. I would still put Cunningham next to any small forward. I think they're still doing their job. One thing that I particularly like, and it's just he's just getting it done in the back, and he's just being quiet about it, is my boy there, Brandon Campbell.
Yeah, gosh, he's a very good decision maker.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's a tough kid too. He's just he when you talk intent, he's got it. Like, he wants to get the ball. He wants to hurt someone along the way. He's getting it done. He had 13 disposals at 92% efficiency, playing that pocket and that halfback kind of role. He's a dangerous. He's got a great kick, and he's a kid who wants it. So he's going to be. Look, he may be a big part of our mids in time as he gets a bit bigger and a bit more time under him, similar to what we have with Mills. But for right now, to have him in the halfback line, we are so happy. We're so lucky.
Well, and look, let's face it, Millsy as a midfielder is so much better for that time in defence. Like, just the way that he, sees the game and seizes that pressure. He defends better than anyone. And, as we know, midfielders, it is a two-way job. And I think it's the perfect education for someone like Braden Campbell to kind of follow that similar path.
Yeah, for sure. And he's got some pretty fantastic people that can teach him. With Cunningham, Lloyd, Rampy. Say what we want to say about their time in the last couple games, but their careers have been stellar. So
it's a tough job. Let's face it, back there.
Oh yeah. Playing against the game's absolute best, especially at Brisbane with all of the fireworks that they have. Far out.
Yeah, big time.
Look, another one that we need to talk about who's just kind of come back into the game, Joey Kennedy. So we saw him back into the middle, 27 pressure acts, second on the ground, 16 centre bounces attendance, which is third in the Swans behind Mills and Parker. So he was right in the mix of it. Having said that, I think from memory, Parker had about 25. So he was a bit behind, but nonetheless, he was in amongst it all. And the other little sneaky thing that's kind of happening, it's not so sneaky. I know our man Zane Red and White's been flagging it on Twitter as well. But Joey Kennedy is 8 contested possessions away from being the all-time leader. Did you see this coming, Jules?
I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. I mean, look, we've been spoiled with Joey Kennedy in our side, for the last, 10 years or thereabouts. Yeah. Look, that is an unbelievable stat. So who will he overtake?
He's going to overtake Gary Ablett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, junior. So that's
right.
Humongous. And to put it in a bit of context, I always love to get the peers back to back. Joey Kennedy's doing this in his 286th game, whereas Ablett got to his 4,000 in 357. So about, what's that, 70 odd games, 71 more games to make it happen. That is...
He's done it at a gallop.
At a gallop. He's also in the top, when I'm looking at the numbers right now, the average of contested possessions by Dangerfield is at 13.45. And then you've got Joey Kennedy at 13.96. That's significantly better every single game over the mark. So to put some extra names in there, Sam Mitchell averaging about 10, Simon Black averaging at 11, Mundy averaging at 9. I mean, it's just the fact that the guy's played 1,000 games is why. You got some other names in here, Trent Cotchin averaging at 10.8. And with Joey Kennedy averaging at almost 14 per game, he's huge. We forget
he's
how amazing
one of the greats. One of the greats, yeah.
The only one that's remotely close to him in terms of averaging is Nat Fyfe. He's actually got 14.7, so he's over. And only played 202 games, so it's a bit of a shame for the Fyfe not being able to stay healthy. But nonetheless, our great Joey Kennedy. So next week at the game, if he plays the game, there's a very strong chance he overtakes Gary Ablett Jr. as the greatest contested possession person of all time, which is massive.
Huge. Well done, Joey. Amazing.
All right. So from that high, let's talk about something else. Papley. Papley back from his hammy that he sustained, I believe, the week before we went live, or 2 weeks before we went to the season. Played his first game in round 7 and played a little bit out of the centers mostly. Jules, it didn't seem like he had too much of an impact. What do you think?
No, well, he had 10 possessions and didn't hit the scoreboard. So, again, we do have pretty lofty expectations of Tom Papley, but that was a real shame. It looked to me like the game was just moving too fast for him. Let's face it, he has just, returning from this hamstring injury. And we really actually could have done with his trademark energy infusions, which he, normally injects into the game, but he just, he looked like he needed a game, at least one game in the VFL, build a bit of confidence and, just kind of get himself into the headspace of what it means to play AFL.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with all of that. The other thing, disposal efficiency at 60%, so not fantastic. He did have 12 pressure acts, so kind of did a little bit, 3 tackles, so really didn't factor in the game much. There was some commentary about he probably should have come through the VFL. I mean, I'm not agreeing with that, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, look, John Longmire said it. Tom will be better for it, for this game. But I think we would have been better for him to play in the VFL and to have somebody else in. To be perfectly honest with you, I think he was well off the mark, and I don't know necessarily if that was the best way to go. I think what Tom needed was probably an injection of confidence. And just get himself back into it. So look, I think we spoke about it off air, but the standard of the VFL is not what we would like it to be. But I think for someone like Tom, just 1 week in there, just as I said, just kind of have a run around and sort of just get himself up to that standard again was probably what he needed.
Yeah, it was a bit like hindsight's 2020, of course, so that we got to factor that into the way we look at this one. But it did seem a bit unusual to throw him straight into the fire against the second best team in the comp, and we knew that this game was going to be huge with both teams 6-1, or chasing 6-1 and trying to get to that point. So it was an interesting pick. In horse we trust for the most part, but the VFL, it is as you said, watching the game before at the SCG before the main game on Sunday. The VFL is not remotely close to that level. Especially our team, we just don't have the bodies, we don't have the smarts. We've got a lot of young boys in there, which is excellent for our development. It was very, very, very good for us, but it's just not the kind of level to kind of drag him through. But having said that, loosen up that hammy, get around the game. I think, as you said, the speed of the game has kind of got away from him a bit.
Yeah.
Look, the other, I guess, while we're here, you had some commentary about the Paddy McCartan footage. Did you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, look, and I know it's been spoken about a lot, whether or not that was appropriate for a camera to be down in the rooms while Paddy was being spoken to by a medical professional. I know that there's a lot of interest around Paddy's story because it is a big one in our game, and everybody knows his history with concussions. But for me, I just don't know really what it adds to the game, that level of sort of attention on someone's medical issue, which should, I think, probably be private. I'm all for enhancing the game with insights and, getting access, I suppose, to the coaches and the players, where we can in between the quarters and in the half and afterwards and that sort of thing. But, yeah, that sort of very personal medical footage, I think, look, we don't need to see it. And I found it very uncomfortable to watch and a bit intrusive. And I think that the players deserve that privacy.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I'm not going to add any more. I think that's exactly the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, while we're talking about injuries, with Paddy McCartan out with concussion, I did recall Horse saying that he felt perfectly fine. They're just being particularly trigger happy with him. They want to make sure that he's got no questions about his health. So he comes back maybe for the next game. He had to sit 12 days out. So
he comes back. It's interesting, right? Because he failed the concussion test, but the doctors don't think he was concussed. They think he failed the test because of stress, which we can all appreciate and understand. But apparently that seems to be fairly common with the concussion test, is that players that obviously have had previous injury and they carry a lot of sort of post-traumatic, stress related to that, tend to struggle with the test. So, yeah, apparently, all good really for Paddy. But, I think we're all just going to be hoping, for the best with him. And it's, he certainly does put himself in the contest and doesn't shy away from it, which makes it pretty nerve-wracking watching him. But let's hope that he can kind of put this behind him and move forward.
Yeah, that's right. Look, he's not wearing the helmet anymore. Like, I'm a little bit surprised, but I also understand that the helmet doesn't really do a whole lot for concussion nonetheless, the way I see it.
Apparently so. I mean, it does seem to us sitting on the couch that, wearing anything on the head would help. But no, they've done a lot of testing on it, and I think it helps with abrasions and that sort of thing, but not for the actual head knock. So
yeah, it's mostly the kind of thing that if mum sees you wearing it, you're kind of better off because she's not going to get
Always
so
wear
worried.
a helmet. Always wear a helmet. Yeah.
That's right. Where's your helmet, Chris? Oh, come on, Mum. A couple other injuries that are kind of set. We've got Hickey, who looks like he might come back next week. He's kind of ahead of schedule. That's pretty exciting. What do you think?
Really exciting. Yeah. No, absolutely thrilled. He certainly has been missed. So let's give the selectors something to think about, and let's let's see if he can be named in the squad next week.
Yeah, it's almost like Tor Jesus has himself some magical powers. Who would have thought? Who would have seen that coming? Who knew? The other one is Angus Sheldrick. He did his knee. It's from what I saw, he did some minor surgery, and it looks like he is set to come back mid-year. So a bit of a back step, bit of adversity already for the young boy. But seeing what we did in round one, we're going to give him a lot of time to make sure that he can put his hand up and get into those seniors again.
Absolutely.
The other one is Fox, who with his hammy is going to be training again this week, which is damn exciting because I think we need a Fox back in the team. We need some options over there. I know we've got Paddy. So with Paddy out, it looked like Blakey took up the position of being a bit of holding on to his man a bit more instead of being released. And of course, we had Reed kind of rolling back there as well. But neither of those are that big body, big runner that probably a Fox is. So it's kind of a tale of a contested possession man contested marker like Paddy. And then the other option is kind of like, a running big boy like Fox to kind of roll in. So we kind of looks like we do have some options coming through, and it looks like we might get some help in that defensive line after all.
Amazing. That would be great.
Well needed in time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Especially after this week. I think it's music to all of our ears to have some more options back there.
That's it. Look, a couple of other things to kind of bring up. Firstly, I think this is important that everyone listening to the podcast knows that both Jules and I are fur parents. We've got our respective animals. I've got my cat, Missy, and you've got your dog. I've forgotten the dog's name, sorry.
Her name is Marley.
Mm-hmm. And there was a picture circulating about the doggy being dressed up in some attire.
Yes. No, she got her first Guernsey, which she is less excited about than me. she tries to bite it off her. It's very nice. It's knitted. Nice knitted Guernsey.
Wow.
So no, she's learning the ways of footy. She's loving the season so far. She's giving it 2 big thumbs up. But she might need to wait a little bit longer. I think to be able to keep that Guernsey on without her trying to rip it off.
Oh no! Yeah, look, I am a crazy cat man myself. I've actually dressed up my cat in an outfit once, and she did not like it. Has not liked it ever since, and was very quick to tell me all about it. And so I've not tried ever since because she is a murderous young girl. She is not one you want to get on the wrong side. So the other thing that's going out there in Swannies news, apart from dressing up our animals in attire, is the AFLW will have a upcoming winter comp that kicks off from May, so just about now, and to July, where they'll actually have a few teams play a number of games amongst them to just kind of get some of the younger players and some of the new players that are kind of coming in through the expansion of the AFLW to give them some opportunities to play against some other of their peers. So in the competition, you've got Tassie, Northern Territory, GWS, and the Swans. I think I'm missing another team here, but I'm sorry if I am. But all the games are going to be played out of North Sydney Oval. So it looks like there's some good football around. So not only the VFL kicking out, not only do we have the AFL doing our thing, we've also got the AFLW actually playing some games around Sydney, which is pretty damn exciting. So, Jules, have you been paying much attention to what's been going on that side?
Yeah, well, look, I'm obviously thrilled that the Sydney Swans are going to be joining the league. who doesn't love more football, right? And I don't know if anyone's ever been to the North Sydney Oval, but it's a great place to watch it. It's got to be up there, I think, with the best views of any sporting ground around the world. Just about, it's a sensational spot to watch some football. So, yeah, let's get around it. May to July. Cannot wait to see what the Sydney Swans team can do in the AFLW.
That's it. And we get to see some of our new players for the first time, which would be fantastic. And yeah, look, I'm quietly just pumped about just getting more football around, more Swannies. I think everyone's a winner for it, which is grand. So good to see that going on. Look, as one last thing, we're playing the Suns at the SCG this week. Any thoughts, tips, any memories of the Suns that you want to talk through?
Yes, there are a few highs and lows from our history with the Suns. We don't need to look much further than last year, where we played them twice. We played them in round 6 and we had a awful 40-point loss. But then we played them again in round 23 and we crushed them by 87 points. So, yep, that's from a rock bottom low to a high. Look, for some reason, and I'm not really sure why it is, I have a couple of theories around it, but it always seems to be way harder for us playing the Suns than I ever think it should be. I think we've generally been the better side, at least on paper. And I wonder if that's been down to Stewie Jew, obviously having, been a coach at the Swans and been mentored by John Longmire, just his influence and knowledge of our inner workings. It seems to have, seemingly been a pretty good advantage to them playing us. Hopefully that advantage is dwindling given there's, more time that has elapsed since he left us. From my side of things, we should get this done. We really should. We were 100% going to be very, very convincing favourites. But I think what we all want to see is a more consistent performance, not just rocking up in the fourth quarter and doing a last-minute job.
Right. Yeah, no, that's it. It's one of those ones where you can kind of, at the end of the day, these are all AFL teams. These are all they're good players. And if they can, each team for the most part can turn it on in any quarter. And we saw it against North. We struggled against Kangaroo.
Yep.
We probably shouldn't have. And
very nearly lost it. Nearly lost it. And, they're talking about, obviously them and West Coast, being the potential wooden spooners. Nearly lost it on our home ground.
That's right. And even to the point where North is looking at getting a priority pick. Like that talk happens every year and it doesn't really kick
That's bad.
Off,
but
that is, your club's in a bad place when they just wanted to gift you a priority pick. Like you're in a bad area. Look, the Suns are kind of funny. We don't play the best against the bad teams, which is kind of a bit consistent with us. Maybe it's just the youth or whatnot lately. But one of the things that you consider is Dewey is being coached there for some time now. Like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, at least that. Yeah.
And look, they're not really taken off, and they've had some good players they haven't been able to keep, which is, I dare say, not necessarily his fault. But they need to find, the AFL is very, very vocal about making sure that the Suns stamp that area. They knuckle it down. I was talking to a Brisbane Lions supporter at the VFL, and we're talking about the Suns and just about how everything was going. And we both were talking about how Alistair Clarkson might get himself back into the game of coaching and perhaps take up an assistant role or the full-time role of Stuart Jew. What do you think? Yeah,
look, I don't think that would be the worst option, actually. I think, let's face it, if any club is looking for a coach, the number one person on your list is definitely Alistair Clarkson. And I think, look, Clarkson and Jew have a history together at Hawthorn.
That's right.
So I think that Jew, he's obviously thrown his hat into the ring in terms of a senior coaching role, but I think he would benefit probably from the mentorship of Clarko going up there, and no doubt make the Suns more competitive and again, from a player perspective, very attractive to a lot of players to go and play under a coach like Clarko. So it can have a lot of flow-on effects. Success breeds success. So, look, I think that would be a very smart move for the Suns.
Right. turn the Gold Coast into a destination club with Clarko up there would be hilarious.
Well, they've certainly got the weather for it. So
I'd say, do you think most of those boys playing down in Melbourne and Geelong, Falcons down there, has ever seen the sun this often? Probably not.
No,
So
absolutely
they won't know
not.
what to do with themselves up there. Don't know what it all is. So yeah, look, let's see how it goes. I personally think it'd be a good thing for the AFL to get Clarko up there. He's always attracts the media and attracts players. And it probably will attract some good coaches as well to go up with him. So, and some good staff, which is something that probably is missing up there in Gold Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the AFL needs the Suns to be successful, and for them to continue to grow their fan base, they need to win games of football and be attractive to watch. So something needs to be done for sure.
Yeah, that's it. Look, well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you, Jules. So on behalf of the Bevy, I would like to say thank you for everyone for listening in. Tune in again on Thursday night for our team announcements, videos, and preview posts. And always make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at A Bevy of Blood for updates, announcements, and just some general fun stuff that we do while we're there. So on behalf of the Bevy, until then, up the Bloods, and can you Swannies?
You!
Swans!